This is a fictional romantic story created for entertainment purposes only. I was exhausted, furious, and completely done with entitled men. So when the arrogant stranger in the first-class lounge stole my charging port and dismissed me like I was nothing, I let him have it. Every frustrated word, every ounce of rage I'd been holding in for weeks. I didn't care that he was wearing a suit that cost more than my rent. I didn't care that the entire lounge was staring. I told him exactly what I thought of men like him. What I didn't know was that this man, the one I'd just publicly humiliated, was Alexander Mercer, billionaire CEO of Mercer Industries, and in exactly 48 hours, he would be sitting across from me at my final interview for my dream job. At his company. Before we continue, I need a quick favor. We're working toward 10,000 subscribers and every single one matters, so if this story pulls you in, please hit that subscribe button. And I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below. It means the world to know you're out there. Now let me tell you how I went from screaming at a stranger in an airport to falling for the most powerful man I'd ever met. Chicago O'Hare International Airport, 11:47 p.m. I was running on 4 hours of sleep, 3 cups of terrible coffee, and the kind of desperate hope that comes from knowing your entire future depends on what happens in the next 2 days. The email had come 3 weeks ago. Congratulations, Ms. Harper. We are pleased to inform you that you have been selected for the final round of interviews for the position of Director of Brand Strategy at Mercer Industries. Mercer Industries, the company I'd dreamed of working for since business school, the innovative tech giant that had revolutionized everything from sustainable energy to artificial intelligence, the corporation that only hired the best of the best. And they wanted me. The final interview was scheduled for Monday morning in New York. I'd booked a flight that would get me in Sunday night, giving me time to rest, prepare, and not look like a complete disaster when I met the executive team. But apparently, the universe had other plans. My original flight had been canceled due to mechanical issues. The rebooking put me on a red-eye that was now delayed by 3 hours. My phone was at 4% battery, and I desperately needed to email my contact at Mercer to let them know I might be cutting it close. The gate area was packed with frustrated travelers, every outlet occupied, but the first-class lounge, the one I'd splurged my last credit card points to access, was supposed to be better. It wasn't. Every visible outlet was taken, every comfortable seat occupied, and then I spotted it, a single charging port near the window with a cord plugged in but no phone attached. Finally, I approached the seating area ready to claim my prize when I noticed the man sprawled across the adjacent leather chair. He was annoyingly attractive, the kind of man who looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine advertisement for expensive watches or luxury cars. Dark hair, slightly disheveled in a way that probably took effort, sharp jaw shadowed with stubble, a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been sewn onto his body. He was typing on a laptop, completely absorbed, the charging cord running from the outlet to his laptop bag, not even being used. "Excuse me," I said, forcing politeness into my voice. "Are you using that outlet? I really need to charge my phone." He didn't look up, didn't even acknowledge I'd spoken. "Excuse me," I repeated, louder this time. "Nothing." I was exhausted, I was stressed, I was terrified that everything I'd worked for was about to fall apart because I couldn't send one email, and this man, this arrogant, entitled man, couldn't even be bothered to look at me. "Hey," I stepped directly into his line of sight, "I'm talking to you." Finally, those eyes lifted from the laptop screen. They were pale gray, almost silver, cold as winter frost. He looked at me the way someone might look at an insect that had landed on their expensive suit. "I heard you," he said dismissively. "I'm busy." "You're busy with a cord that isn't connected to anything." I pointed at the outlet. "Your laptop is running on battery. I can see the icon. You're just hoarding the port." "It's occupied." "By nothing." "By my cord, which means it's occupied." He returned his attention to his laptop, dismissing me completely. "Find another outlet." Something inside me snapped. 3 weeks of anxiety about this interview, months of working 60-hour weeks at a job that didn't appreciate me, years of being overlooked and dismissed and treated like I didn't matter by men exactly like this one. You know what? My voice was loud enough to turn heads throughout the lounge. I am so sick of men like you. He looked up again, one eyebrow raised, as if my outburst was mildly entertaining. Men like me. Entitled, arrogant, so convinced the world exists to serve you that you can't even extend basic human courtesy to someone asking for help. I was on a roll now, weeks of frustration pouring out. You're sitting there in your $10,000 suit, taking up space you don't need, and you can't be bothered to spare an outlet you're not even using. Because why would you? You've probably never had to fight for anything in your entire life. The lounge had gone quiet, everyone was watching. You don't know anything about me, he said, his voice dangerously low. I know enough. I know you're the kind of man who steps on people without noticing, who treats everyone around you like they're beneath you, who thinks money and power mean you never have to consider anyone else's existence. I leaned closer, my voice dropping to match his. But here's the thing, your suit doesn't impress me, your attitude doesn't intimidate me, and I am not going to apologize for calling out your behavior just because you're used to people bowing down to you. For a long moment we just stared at each other. Something flickered in those silver eyes, surprise, maybe, or grudging respect, or possibly just fury. Are you finished? He asked quietly. For now. I turned on my heel and walked away, my heart pounding, my face flushed. I found another seat in the corner of the lounge, eventually discovering an outlet hidden behind a plant. I plugged in my phone and sent the email I needed to send. And I didn't look at the arrogant stranger again. Not even when I felt his gaze on me for the rest of the wait. Not even when we boarded the same flight, and I realized he was in first class while I was crammed into economy. Not even when I landed in New York at 4 a.m., exhausted and anxious, with exactly 28 hours until the interview that would change my life. Monday morning, 9:00 a.m., Mercer Industries headquarters. The building was even more impressive in person than it looked in photos. 47 stories of glass and steel, rising from the Manhattan skyline like a monument to modern innovation. The lobby was all marble and light, with a massive art installation that probably cost more than my entire apartment building. I'd slept for exactly 6 hours. I'd rehearsed my talking points until I could recite them in my sleep. I'd chosen my best interview outfit, a navy blue sheath dress that made me look professional without being boring, paired with heels high enough to project confidence but practical enough to actually walk in. I was ready. You've got this, Alina, I told myself as I approached the security desk. You've worked your entire life for this moment, don't screw it up. The security guard directed me to the 45th floor, where the executive offices were located. I rode the elevator alone, watching the numbers climb, my heart rate increasing with each passing floor. The doors opened to reveal a reception area that looked like something out of a design magazine. Clean lines, warm woods, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A polished woman in her 50s sat behind the desk, her smile genuinely warm. Ms. Harper, we've been expecting you. I'm Patricia, Mr. Mercer's executive assistant. Can I get you anything before we begin? Water, coffee. Water would be wonderful, thank you. She gestured to a seating area. Make yourself comfortable. The interview will begin in about 10 minutes. There's been a slight delay with Mr. Mercer's morning schedule. Mr. Mercer, as in Alexander Mercer, the CEO himself. I'd known the final interview would be with senior executives, but the CEO personally, that was unexpected and terrifying. I sat down, accepting the water Patricia brought me, and tried to calm my racing heart. Through the glass walls of the office suite, I could see people moving purposefully, having important conversations, doing important work. Soon, I could be one of them. Focus, Alina, you've earned this. Exactly 12 minutes later, Patricia's phone buzzed. She listened, nodded, and turned to me with that warm smile. Mr. Mercer is ready for you, right this way. She led me down a corridor lined with awards and press coverage, past offices where brilliant people were probably solving world-changing problems, to a massive corner office with views of Central Park on one side and the Empire State Building on the other. The door was already open. Patricia gestured for me to enter. I stepped inside, my eyes immediately drawn to the man standing behind the expansive desk. And my blood ran cold. Dark hair slightly disheveled, sharp jaw shadowed with stubble, silver eyes that had looked at me like I was an insect at Chicago O'Hare. The arrogant stranger. From the airport. The man I had publicly humiliated in front of an entire first-class lounge. He was Alexander Mercer, Billionaire CEO, the person who would decide whether I got my dream job. And he was staring at me with an expression of absolute satisfaction. "Ms. Harper," he said smoothly, gesturing to the chair across from his desk, "please have a seat." I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything except stand there as every hope I'd ever had crumbled to dust. "Is something wrong?" His voice was deceptively casual. "You look like you've seen a ghost." He's enjoying this, I realized. He's absolutely enjoying watching me realize how badly I've destroyed my own future. "Mr. Mercer," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper, I didn't realize. Didn't realize what? That the entitled, arrogant man in the $10,000 suit might actually be someone worth knowing. He leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking softly. "Please, sit." I sat because what else could I do? "I read your resume thoroughly," he continued, flipping open a folder on his desk. "Stanford MBA, 5 years at Chen and Associates, where you increased brand engagement by 43%, creative director for the successful relaunch of 3 major product lines, glowing recommendations from everyone you've ever worked with." He looked up at me, those silver eyes unreadable. "On paper, you're exactly what this company needs, but I have to admit I'm curious about something." "What's that?" My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "The woman I met in that airport lounge, the one who called me out in front of 50 strangers without a moment's hesitation, is that the real Alina Harper, or is the polished professional sitting in front of me the authentic version?" I should have apologized, should have groveled, should have done whatever it took to salvage this disaster. Instead, I heard myself say, "Both." He raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "The woman in the airport was exhausted, stressed, and pushed to her breaking point. She saw something unfair and she reacted, maybe not professionally, maybe not wisely, but honestly." I took a breath, steadying myself. "The woman sitting in front of you has worked incredibly hard to get here. She believes in your company's mission. She knows she could contribute meaningfully to your brand strategy, and she's not going to pretend that what happened at the airport didn't happen. So you're not going to apologize? Do you want me to?" The question hung in the air between us. "What I want," Alexander said slowly, "is to understand why I should hire someone who might publicly challenge me the moment she disagrees with my decisions." "Because that's exactly what you need." The words came out before I could stop them, but I didn't take them back. "Excuse me." "I've done my research, Mr. Mercer. Mercer Industries is at a crossroads. Your technology is revolutionary, but your public image is cold. Clinical, people admire your innovations, but they don't connect with your brand emotionally. You need someone who isn't afraid to tell you hard truths, someone who will push back when you're wrong, someone who cares more about getting it right than about protecting your ego." His expression was impossible to read. "And you think you're that person?" "I think I just proved it." I met his gaze steadily. "Most candidates would be falling over themselves to apologize for what happened at the airport. They'd tell you whatever you wanted to hear to salvage the opportunity. But I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not. Yes, I lost my temper. Yes, my delivery was unprofessional. But my core point was valid. You were being dismissive and unkind, and someone needed to call you on it." For a long, terrible moment, silence filled the office. Then Alexander Mercer smiled. And somehow that was more terrifying than his anger. "Ms. Harper," he said, closing my file with a decisive snap, "I think you might be exactly what this company needs." I got the job. Not despite the airport incident, but, as Alexander made abundantly clear, partially because of it. "Everyone who works for me is terrified of disagreeing with me," he explained during my orientation. "They tell me what they think I want to hear, not what I need to hear. You're the first person in years who's looked me in the eye and told me I was wrong." "I believe I said you were entitled and arrogant." Same thing in my case. His smile was almost boyish, completely at odds with the cold man I'd met in Chicago. You start Monday, don't make me regret this. I didn't. From my first day as director of brand strategy, I threw myself into the work. I analyzed their current positioning, identified gaps, developed proposals for campaigns that would humanize the Mercer Industries brand. I worked 14-hour days, not because anyone demanded it, but because I genuinely believed in what we could build. And Alexander Mercer was everywhere. He attended my presentations personally, something he apparently never did for department heads. He stopped by my office to check on progress at least twice a week. He invited me to strategy meetings I had no business attending, just because he valued my perspective. People are starting to talk, my colleague Marcus warned me one afternoon. The CEO doesn't give this much attention to anyone. He's invested in the rebranding initiative. It's a major company priority. Elena, Marcus gave me a look. He skipped a board meeting last week to attend your focus group presentation, a board meeting. I didn't know what to do with that information. Because the truth was, something was shifting between Alexander and me, something that went beyond professional interest. It was in the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention, the way he remembered small details I mentioned in passing, my favorite coffee order appearing on my desk during late nights, a first edition of my favorite book showing up by accident in the break room, the way he sought out my company, finding excuses to be wherever I was. And it was in the way I felt when he was near. My heart racing, my skin tingling, my thoughts scattering in directions they absolutely should not go. He was my boss, he was a billionaire, he was completely, utterly off limits. But when he looked at me with those silver eyes, I forgot all the reasons I should keep my distance. 3 months into my job, we were working late on the launch campaign for Mercer's new sustainable energy initiative. Everyone else had gone home. The office was dark except for the lights in his corner suite, where we'd spread campaign materials across his conference table. This is good, Alexander said, studying the mock-ups I'd prepared. Really good, but something's missing. What? I don't know, it feels safe, polished but predictable. He looked at me. What would the woman from the airport do? She'd probably tell you that you're overthinking it. Would she? She'd say that sometimes the most powerful message is the simplest one, that people don't connect with perfection, they connect with authenticity, with vulnerability. I picked up one of the mock-ups. This is beautiful, but it's not real. It doesn't make anyone feel anything. So what should we do instead? Tell the truth, I met his eyes. Show the failures alongside the successes, the problems you haven't solved yet alongside the ones you have. Let people see that Mercer Industries isn't a perfect machine, it's a group of humans trying to make the world better and sometimes getting it wrong. Alexander was quiet for a long moment, studying me with an intensity that made my breath catch. You're remarkable, you know that. I'm just doing my job. No, he stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle that I'd started to associate with late nights and racing hearts. You're doing so much more than your job, you're changing how I see everything. Alexander. I've been trying not to do this. His voice was rough, trying to keep things professional, but I can't stop thinking about you, Elena, not since the airport, not since you looked at me with fire in your eyes and told me exactly who I was. We work together, you're my boss. I know all the reasons we shouldn't. He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face in a gesture so tender it made my heart ache. But I need to know if you feel it too. This, pull between us, tell me I'm imagining it and I'll never mention it again. I should have told him he was imagining it, should have protected my career, my professionalism, my carefully constructed life. Instead, I told him the truth. You're not imagining it. His kiss was everything I'd been trying not to want. Demanding and tender, consuming and careful. He kissed me like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment, and I kissed him back like I was finally coming home. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. This is probably a terrible idea, he murmured. Probably. People will talk, the board will have concerns, HR is going to have a field day. I know. I don't care. His hands cupped my face, his silver eyes burning with something that looked like hope. I haven't felt like this in, ever. I'm not willing to walk away from it just because it's complicated. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we figure it out together, carefully, properly, whatever we need to do to make this work without compromising your position or your integrity. His thumb traced my cheekbone. I want to do this right. Alina, you deserve that. Looking into his eyes, I saw something I hadn't expected from the cold, arrogant man I'd met in that airport lounge. I saw vulnerability, uncertainty, the fear of wanting something you might lose. And I realized that beneath all the power and the wealth and the intimidating exterior, Alexander Mercer was just a man hoping to be chosen. Okay, I whispered, let's figure it out together. We were careful, discreet. Alexander restructured reporting lines, so I answered to the COO instead of him directly. We disclosed our relationship to HR and the board, enduring uncomfortable meetings and signing documentation that protected both the company and my position. We kept things professional in the office, saving our personal relationship for after hours. It wasn't easy. There were whispers, of course, speculation about whether I'd earned my position through merit or manipulation, raised eyebrows when we arrived at company events together. But my work spoke for itself. The rebranding campaign was a massive success, generating more positive media coverage than anything Mercer Industries had done in years. My team's initiatives were exceeding every metric. Even the skeptics had to admit I was good at my job. And Alexander was different than I'd expected. The cold, dismissive man from the airport was nothing like the one who brought me coffee in the mornings and rubbed my shoulders after long days, who listened attentively when I talked about my ideas and pushed back thoughtfully when he disagreed, who made me laugh until I cried and held me when I was stressed and looked at me like I was the most fascinating person he'd ever met. You're not what I thought you were, I told him one night, curled up on the couch in his penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park. Neither are you, he pulled me closer, his lips brushing my temple. I thought you were a spitfire who'd burn through my life and disappear. I didn't expect you to change everything. I haven't changed anything, You've changed me. His voice was serious now, his silver eyes intent. Before you, I'd convinced myself that connection was a weakness, that letting anyone close enough to matter was a vulnerability I couldn't afford, so I kept everyone at a distance, wore arrogance like armor. And now I can't imagine my life without you in it. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. You make me want to be better, Alina, not just a successful CEO but a good man, someone worthy of the way you look at me. Tears pricked my eyes. You already are. I'm working on it, he kissed me softly. You're teaching me how. 6 months into our relationship, Alexander invited me to the company's annual charity gala as his official date, our first truly public appearance as a couple. Are you sure? I asked, studying the elegant invitation. This is a big statement. I'm sure. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. I'm tired of hiding. I want everyone to know you're mine. Possessive. Absolutely. His teeth grazed my earlobe and I shivered. Is that a problem? No, I admitted. It's really, really not. The gala was spectacular, a transformed ballroom dripping with flowers and candlelight. The city's elite gathered to support children's education initiatives. I wore a deep burgundy gown that Alexander had insisted on buying for me, despite my protests about the price tag. You're going to be photographed tonight, he'd said firmly. You should wear something that makes you feel like the queen you are. And I did feel like a queen walking into that ballroom on his arm. Heads turned, cameras flashed, whispers rippled through the crowd. But they weren't unkind whispers. If anything, people seemed fascinated by the woman who'd captured the attention of the city's most eligible bachelor. You're glowing, Alexander murmured as we made our way through the crowd, stopping to greet important donors and partners. Have I told you how beautiful you look tonight? Only 17 times. Not nearly enough then. We danced, we mingled, we posed for photos that would appear in society columns the next morning. And through it all, Alexander never left my side, his hand always finding my back, my waist, my fingers. It was perfect. Until it wasn't. We were near the bar when she appeared, a stunning blonde in a silver dress that looked like liquid mercury, her smile cold and knowing. "Alexander, darling," she air-kissed both his cheeks before he could step back. "It's been too long." "Victoria," his voice was carefully neutral, but I felt him tense beside me. "I didn't realize you were in town." "Just flew in from Paris." Her eyes slid to me, assessing and dismissive in equal measure. "And who is this?" "Elena Harper, my partner." Alexander's arm tightened around my waist. "Elena, this is Victoria Ashworth, an old acquaintance." "Old acquaintance," Victoria laughed, a sound like tinkling glass. "Is that what we're calling it now? Darling, we dated for 2 years. I think that warrants something more than acquaintance." 2 years, he'd never mentioned a serious ex. Then again, I'd never asked. "That was a long time ago," Alexander said flatly. "Not so long," Victoria's smile sharpened. "Though I must say you've certainly changed your type. I thought you preferred women who knew their place." The words were obviously meant to wound, and I felt them land. But I'd faced down worse than Victoria Ashworth. "I prefer women with substance," Alexander said coldly, "which is exactly why things ended between us." Victoria's perfect composure flickered, rage flashing in her eyes before she smoothed it away. "Well, I'm sure your little project is very impressive." She looked me up and down. "Tell me, Elena, does it bother you, knowing you'll never quite fit into his world, that people will always whisper about how you got your position?" "Victoria," Alexander started, his voice dangerous. "It's okay," I placed a calming hand on his arm, then turned to Victoria with a smile. "To answer your question, no, it doesn't bother me, because I know my worth and it has nothing to do with what people whisper. I earned my position through years of hard work. I earned Alexander's love by being exactly who I am." I stepped closer to her, lowering my voice. "But I wonder, does it bother you, knowing that all your money and beauty and social connections weren't enough to keep him, that he chose substance over superficiality?" Victoria's face went pale, then flushed with fury. "You have no idea who you're talking to." "I know exactly who I'm talking to." My voice was steady, calm. "A woman who peaked in high school and has been trying to recapture that feeling ever since. I'm sorry that didn't work out for you, but your bitterness is not my problem." I turned my back on her, taking Alexander's hand. "Shall we dance?" He looked at me with something like awe. "That was too much." "Perfect." He pulled me onto the dance floor, spinning me into his arms. "You're incredible, you know that. She's destroyed people with less provocation." "I've dealt with Victoria Ashworths my entire career. They only have power if you give it to them." "I should have warned you about her, about my past." "You don't owe me a catalog of your exes, Alexander. I know who you are now, that's what matters." He was quiet for a moment, holding me close as we swayed to the music. "She was right about one thing," he finally said. "I did prefer women who knew their place, who didn't challenge me, who let me be the cold, controlled man I thought I needed to be. And now I can't imagine being with anyone who doesn't challenge me, who doesn't push back when I'm wrong, who doesn't make me want to be better." He pulled back to look at me, his silver eyes intense. "You've ruined me for anyone else, Elena. You know that, right?" "Good." I rose on my toes to kiss him softly. "Because you're stuck with me." 1 year after the airport incident, Alexander took me back to Chicago. "I want to show you something," he said mysteriously, leading me through O'Hare toward the first-class lounge where we'd first met. It had been remodeled since then, new furniture, new layout, but he led me to a specific spot near the window. "This is where you were standing when you told me off," he said, pulling me to face him. "Right here in front of all those people, you looked at me like I was nothing more than my worst behavior, and you called me out on it. I still can't believe you hired me after that." "I could not hire you. From the moment you opened your mouth, I was fascinated. Furious, yes, but fascinated." He reached into his jacket pocket. You showed me who I'd become and, more importantly, who I could be if I let someone actually see me." He pulled out a small velvet box and my heart stopped. "Elena Harper, 1 year ago you fell into my life like a storm I never saw coming. You challenged everything I thought I knew about myself. You made me want to be worthy of the way you looked at me when you were angry, because even then I could see that you expected better from me, that you believed I could be better." He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, an oval diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like captured stars. "I love you, I love your fire and your compassion and your brilliant mind. I love how you make me laugh and how you call me out when I'm being an idiot. I love building a life with you, and I want to build so much more." He dropped to one knee, right there in the airport lounge where it all began. "Will you marry me?" The lounge had gone quiet. Strangers were watching just like they had a year ago, but this time they were smiling, waiting. Tears streamed down my face as I looked at this man who had transformed from an arrogant stranger into the love of my life. "Yes," I whispered, then louder, "Yes, I'll marry you." He slid the ring onto my finger and swept me into his arms, kissing me while the entire lounge burst into applause. "I love you," he murmured against my lips. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving I deserve you." "You already do." I pulled back to look at him, this man who had caught me when I fell into his life with all my anger and my fear. "You've always been worth more than you believed, Alexander. I just helped you see it." We got married 6 months later in a ceremony that managed to be both elegant and intimate. I wore my mother's vintage veil with a modern gown. Alexander cried when he saw me walking down the aisle, something he later denied but multiple cameras had captured. Our vows were personal, written late at night in the penthouse that had become our home. "I promise to always challenge you," I told him, holding his hands at the altar, "to never let you hide behind coldness when you're capable of such warmth, to remind you every day that you're worthy of love, especially when you forget." "I promise to always listen when you call me out," he replied, his voice rough with emotion, "to never take your fire for granted, to spend the rest of my life being the man you saw when you looked past my armor." At the reception, during his speech, Alexander told the story of how we met. The entire room laughed as he described the angry woman who'd publicly humiliated him in an airport lounge. "I thought she was the most infuriating person I'd ever met," he said, looking at me with adoration. "And I was right, she still infuriates me regularly, but she also inspires me, challenges me, and makes me better in every way." He raised his glass. "To Elena, the woman who wasn't afraid to tell me who I was, and who loved me enough to show me who I could become." Later on the dance floor, he held me close and whispered in my ear, "Thank you for yelling at me in that airport. Thank you for not holding a grudge. I could never hold a grudge against you." He spun me gently, then pulled me back. "I might not have known it then, but you falling into my life was the best thing that ever happened to me." "I didn't fall into your life, I crashed into it, loudly, with lots of public humiliation." "Same thing," he kissed me softly. "You crashed into my life and you changed everything, and I'm going to spend forever being grateful for that." Standing in my husband's arms, surrounded by our loved ones, I thought about how far we'd come, from strangers in an airport to partners in everything, from anger and misunderstanding to love and commitment. Sometimes the best things in life come from the worst moments. Sometimes you have to fall apart before you can fall together. And sometimes you have to yell at a stranger in an airport to find the love of your life. So that's how I went from screaming at a stranger to marrying him. But I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a terrible first impression of someone who later became important to you, someone you misjudged who turned out to be completely different than you expected? When Alexander hired me despite what happened at the airport, he said it was because I wasn't afraid to challenge him. Do you think that's important in a relationship, someone who will tell you hard truths, even when it's uncomfortable? And what about Victoria at the gala? Have you ever had to stand up to someone who tried to make you feel small? How did you handle it? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one and I genuinely want to know what you think. If this story resonated with you, if you felt the tension between Alexander and me, if you understood why a confrontation in an airport led to something beautiful, please hit that subscribe button. Your support means everything. Was I right to be so bold in that interview? Should I have apologized for what happened at the airport, or was standing my ground the right choice? Also, I'm curious, do you think relationships that start with conflict can actually be stronger? Is there something about seeing someone at their worst that creates a more authentic foundation? Let me know your thoughts below. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here with me through this journey from strangers to soulmates. And remember, sometimes the person you want to throttle ends up being the person you can't live without. Until next time.